What's up, guys? We're back out in the shop today. I think when we left off in the last video, we had finished up the deck filler panel and the rust around the back glass. I have since repaired this spot where I screwed up. I just had to go in and cut the welds out right there and lift it up and reclamp it and kind of weld it up. I worked on the little joint right there. I went ahead and ground all this down where I had welded it. Kind of filled in right there. I still got to do something up here. I need to fill that in, and I don't know if I should weld a piece in here. Usually this is just, there's a seam there that's filled with seam sealer, or I don't know if back then they used lead. It doesn't feel like lead. I don't know what they used back then, but I'm gonna try to figure that out, and then we're gonna get a little bit of filler on this, let it dry. I'm gonna do something kind of stupid, but I've been kind of playing around with some spray paint. I want to try to match, like blend this in. I had some red that I painted and let dry, and then I kind of scuffed it up, and I had two different colors. I got this one and this one. This is just some red paint I had laying around. This one here I think is too bright, so we're not going to use that one. But this one is pretty close. I think I want to try to blend, you know, once I get the filler on it, and then I'm going to scuff this and I'm going to paint it all and kind of scuff it up and try to blend it to the rest of the paint. I'm just going to do like where the bare spots are. I did go ahead and fix this spot. It's kind of lumpy like everything else. Excuse me. I said in the last video I was really happy with how it turned out, and I am, but it's definitely not perfect. You know, I've never claimed to be a body man. It's really just like, as far as like if you were trying to get this ready for a actual paint job, it's bad. But for just a ratty old driver, it's pretty damn good. Especially for somebody, like I said, that don't know what the hell they're doing. But I think I'm just gonna just put a skim coat on all this and kind of sand it down, and then like I said, we'll try to blend in with that red paint. I do have a few spot welds. I had to go back and I had a couple of pinholes I welded up, so I need to grind all that down. And I can't remember if I ground the spot welds on the inside, so I need to do that before we get too far into this. But yeah, that's kind of where, boy, I got a real bad hot spot right there. I wonder if I can try to hammer that down. Anyway, I'm gonna just kind of tinker with it a little bit and see if we can make it just a little bit better. All right, I got a little filler on it on both sides. I think my hardener may be old. It didn't come out very good, and it did, you know, usually this stuff starts setting up pretty quick, but it is not setting up yet. So I hope I don't have to redo all this, hopefully. But we're gonna let it dry for a while, and then we'll get it all sanded down. Hopefully everything will work out pretty good. Probably not, but we'll give it a shot. And then, like I said, we're going to try to paint match that as best we can. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't decided. I don't want it to look... Well, I don't want to say I don't want it to look bad. The whole car looks bad, but I don't want it to look like I took a can of spray paint to it. If I can get it to match pretty close without it... I got that filler all over everything. But anyway, you get what I'm trying to say. So I guess we just gotta wait for everything to dry now. All right, so my least favorite thing in the world is doing body work, but I've sanded this all down, and then I put a few little spots of like glazing putty and sanded it again. I had a few other little spots, so I'm waiting for that to dry. Got this side pretty much all sanded down. I did have a couple of little spots where I had to go back with the glazing putty. So just a lot of sanding and filling and waiting to dry, and sanding and filling and waiting to dry. So I had a little spot, a low spot there that I'm going to try to, you know, take care of, and then we'll get all this sanded down, and I'll put some, I got some primer and some sealer we'll put on it, and then we'll attempt, and I, in quotation marks, I stress attempt, to try to match the paint a little bit. The thing about it, if it doesn't work, if it looks like crap, I can always just grind it all back off and do something different, or just primer over it and just have primer spots on it. It really isn't going to matter, you know, how bad it looks. So it can't look no worse than it has already, right? So I 100% do not have the patience to be a body guy. This is probably as good as I'm going to get it. I could probably put a little more right there, but I think what I'm gonna go do, I'm gonna drop a picture right here somewhere to show what this used to look like. And what it looks like now. I mean, a body man would look at this and go, God dang, dude, what is your problem? But I don't care. I think I'm going to put some primer on it and see if how it looks with primer on it. And then we may have to do a little more work to it. I know I have some spots that probably are going to show up even worse with primer on it. But I got it all sanded down and cleaned up as good as I really want to mess with it. So yeah, I hate body work, but I'm gonna try to like tape it off, just, you know, as minimal as possible to cover my repair. And then we're gonna try to like blend it to what little bit of red paint is still on this car. Like we'll probably just, I did come down a little further down here than I wanted to, so, but we may come across there and just go follow this up right through there. I don't know. I'm just going to play with it a little bit and kind of see. I mean, this may wind up getting all sanded off and, you know, redone before it's all over with. I don't know if I can do this left-handed. right, I'm gonna let that kind of dry for a second, and then I may put another coat on there. I want this kind of thick. I don't know if that's gonna help or make a difference, but we're gonna find out. You know, it actually looks pretty decent. I mean, there's some pinholes here and there in some of the filler, and there's a few little wrinkles right there, but all this is going to be scuffed down once we get the red paint on it. But I mean, as far as the shape of everything, from the metal work and all that, I'm okay with it. You know, as bad as this was when I started on it, I mean, this is leaps and bounds better than it was. It's definitely not great body work, but like I said, I don't have the patience to make everything just perfect. This is why I drive stuff like this. This is why my cars look like this, because I don't know how to do body work correctly. I don't have the patience for it, and I can't afford to pay somebody else to do it. So that's why we have ratty cars like this, and they're more fun. But this side really turned out good, but there also wasn't near the amount of work on this side as there was over there. This side over here was pretty extensive, but so we're going to let the primer dry, and we're going to throw some red paint on it, and then after it dries, we'll try to scuff it up and get it close to what we already have. Maybe it's probably just a big waste of damn time, but we'll see. All right, I got the color on it. I put it on kind of thick. It's got there's some rubble runs in it and a few little bubbles here and there, but it's all going to be sanded. Oops, got a bad run right there. Anyway, it's all going to be sanded anyhow, so I didn't figure it really mattered, right? But I don't know. I really hope this works out like I'm thinking it's going to work out in my head, but probably won't. But I think I'm going to let it dry overnight and get good and dry before I start sanding on it. I think I'm going to start, I have like some gray Scotch-Brite. I think I'm going to try that. If that don't work, we'll have to maybe go up to something a little better. I've got some sandpaper and stuff, but yeah, that's the plan, is just scuff that till it kind of matches this a little bit. But fingers crossed. All right, it's the next day. I pulled the tape off of it except for on the trunk lid. I kind of think maybe now I shouldn't have taped it off, because now I got this hard line. But I don't know. But it don't really feel, well, I guess it is dry. It just feels weird. But yeah, I definitely got some wrinkles in it, but like I said, that ain't gonna matter. But I probably should have just fogged it on there instead of taping it off. Oh well. We're gonna play with it and see what we can do with it. Well, it didn't quite work out as good as I wanted it to, but this side I think is okay. Getting that hard line off where I taped it off was more difficult than I thought it was going to be. This part right here I think I can live with that. This is going to have to be knocked down a little more. You can definitely tell the difference in the color between the trunk lid and that, but this matches pretty. This side didn't turn out near as good. I think once it weathers, like where these bare spots are, I think it'll look a little better. I am gonna have to work on this area right here a little bit. The tape line was definitely a mistake. I should have just kind of fogged it. And I think I'm gonna sand this down a little more and then maybe spray some more paint on it, like down to about right here, and try to cover all of that, and then sand it down and have some of the gray showing through a little bit. But definitely gonna have to work on this a little more and knock the brightness down on it. But I think for the most part, it's fine. I mean, like I said, it didn't work out quite as good as I wanted to, but I think after time, when some of these bare spots kind of come in, you know, get a little surface rust on them, maybe we might knock a little more of the red down right here. But I mean, if you just kind of back away from it and squint, it looks pretty good, you know. But you can definitely tell that I'm trying to match it, you know. It doesn't look as weathered as I wanted it to, but I don't know. I mean, I'm okay with it. We are definitely gonna have to knock some more down on this side, but anyway, like I said, it was kind of a dumb idea anyway. I mean, I just wanted it to be kind of close since I'm not painting this car. You know, I was just mainly trying to hide my, got my tape, hide my metal work and stuff and shitty body work. But I guess the most important thing is there's just not big gaping holes back here now, rusted out. So at least it's solid now. But like I said, maybe after it weathers a little bit, some tape left still, it'll look all right. And I really don't think that paint was good and dry. Like, it set overnight, but it's really started kind of clumping up on me. I did wet sand it some too, and that seemed to help, but I don't know. I mean, this side looks terrible anyway, so it really doesn't matter what that's gonna look like. I mean, I think if you're out somewhere, people aren't gonna focus on this. They're gonna look at this and be like, oh my God, that's terrible, you know. I think their eyes are immediately gonna go to that, not that. So, you know, it is what it is. But I don't know what we're going to do now. We may work on this fender a little bit. I don't know. I need to get that done. And God, there's just an endless list of things that need to be done to this car. I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to tackle this yet. This panel has the brace made on it, so I don't really know what to do. If it was just the skin, like the outer skin, I would probably just trim it off here, unbolt what little bit is left under there, bolt that on there, you know, clamp that to the fender, mark it, cut it, and then weld it. But this adds a whole new level of complexity to it that I'm not really sure what to do here. This is like everything else that I've done so far. I've never done it before, so I'm just trying to figure it out. So I don't know. I don't know what to do, but yeah, this whole area is just bondoed over, or was bondoed over, but the brace, I wonder if I can, it's just spot welded to that. I guess I could take the brace off, cut that, and then cut the brace, weld the new part of the brace on there, and then weld the skin on over that maybe, and then spot weld it. You know, it just spot welds along the sides and then down here on the very bottom. I don't know. You know, there's a couple spot welds there, and then all down this. That would make it easier, I think, than trying to match, because I'm trying to do it without taking the fender off. I'm almost half tempted on putting the door back on so all this lines up, but I think I can line it up, because I'm just going to try to replace just enough to repair the damage, you know. So as long as I line it up with the rocker and come up through here, I think it'll be fine. Maybe. I mean, it actually looks like it kind of dips in a little more right there than that one does, but you know, none of the gaps are perfect on this car anyway, or gonna be, but I think it would just be easier to do it that way. Maybe. It would probably be easier to just take the fender off, but I don't want to do that. But I might have to. Let me think about it for a second and ponder my options. All right, so got it unbolted. I mean, well, sort of. The bolts are kind of seized up, but I got it loose enough where I could pull it out. I still ain't 100% sure how I'm gonna do this, but I'm going to cut some of this out of my way and just kind of get an idea of what I'm working with here and see if there's any damage back behind there that I need to work on, like where it bolts underneath, before I get too far into it. I'm afraid that once I cut this off though, the fender's gonna want to like do that because it has no support in the front. So I may try to find something to kind of hold it up in the front maybe. It's still bolted here, and down there, but I'm still afraid it's going to want to tilt down a little bit. But I don't know. We'll just start cutting and see what happens. All right, I cut a little part of the fender out. It looks like I might can trim the brace right here, and then just separate the brace from the patch and weld that in. The problem is this back lip is going to be attached to it maybe, but it doesn't, well, I don't know, maybe it's not attached. I can see daylight through there. So if I cut right across here, let me get the camera where y'all can see what I'm talking about. Like, finish this line out all the way inside there, and get this piece out with, and then cut this right there and try to match and put the brace in first, and then put the skin over. Maybe that'll work. I don't know. Like I said, I'm trying to figure this out as I go. I've never done that. I wish I would have just, I wish you could have bought the brace and the skin separately so I didn't have to drill out all them spot welds, but I'm sure you can. Maybe I just didn't look, I didn't know what I was doing when I ordered parts. I just seen, patch panel for the fender, and I was like, oh, that's what I need, but when you don't know what you're doing, sometimes you don't always order the right stuff. But we're gonna make it work. We're gonna have to, because I've already cut half the bottom of the fender off. So let me study on it some more. Well, let me go ahead and just cut this. I know I gotta cut that piece off there, so let me just cut that off. Damn door hinge is gonna be right in my way. Get something else to cut that with. Well, I'm gonna have to turn the compressor on, so I'll turn y'all off so you don't have to listen to it. That's with the skin just kind of sitting up against it. Of course, it's too low at the bottom. I just got it kind of snapped on there. Probably not going to go up this high. I'm probably going to trim it maybe about right there when I get to that point, but Oh, of course, it's going to take two hands. Spot welds drilled out to separate that. So what I think I'm going to do is try to get this marked where I need it. I think I'm just going to trim some of it off and maybe squeeze it together a little bit where it'll slide up in there, then I can mark it where I want to cut it. Maybe. There's a break right there. I may just trim it right there. There. Let me get a marker. I'm going to cut a little more off of it. I don't cut too much. Let me find the little, I had to cut the bolts off, so I might find some bolts and nuts there and try to bolt that in and then mark it. All right, I got the brace piece welded on there. It doesn't really look super straight, but you know, it is what it is. I think once we get everything trimmed where we can put the fender patch in there, that can all be kind of pulled together or whatever. And there's a lot of play where it bolts, like the where the bolt goes, and there's a pretty good gap. So we'll have some adjustment. You can see there how much bigger the hole is. So the brace is the same way. So, but I think I'm gonna get a little primer on it, you know, kind of scuff everything up and get a little primer on that before we start trying to fit the fender on there. So that'll have to dry for a little bit. But I mean, I'll tell you what, this, as always, is way more than I had anticipated. But we're getting it figured out. I mean, we ain't got no choice. We gotta get it figured out now. We can't ride around with half a fender. And I cannot find a driver's fender anywhere. I have an extra passenger fender right there, but I don't have any extra driver fenders. So, and I've scoured Marketplace. There's nothing local to me, and I ain't driving halfway across the country for one when, you know, I can fix this one. Which, you know, I mean, I hate to repeat myself all the time, which I know I do that a lot, but, you know, that's why I bought this car, was to learn how to do this stuff. So I'm learning. All right, so I've got it bolted underneath. Got it pretty close, like where it needs to be right there. I've marked a line on there, but I'm gonna have to, you know, sand the old paint off before I can, you know, weld anyway. But I still got the old fender, probably still extends down to about right there. I left me a little room to kind of play with, because it really wasn't fitting that great at first, but I think I've got it. I went ahead and cut some of this part off of that one. It looks okay, you know, looking at it from a distance. It's a little kind of, I don't know, shaped weird on the bottom, but this car had chrome trim along the bottom, so I will probably put that back on it, and it'll hide most of that. I'm trying to figure out how I want to do this, because it was a pain in the butt to get it all in there and bolted on, because I did weld the brace in crooked, so nothing wanted to line up, so I had to like force everything. I started to just like cut and weld at the same, you know, just cut a little bit, weld, cut a little bit, but then I won't be able to get the old piece out. So I'm gonna have to take, what I think I'm gonna do is go ahead and make my line and cut past where the brace is and get that piece out, and then clamp everything like it is now, and then cut, like maybe with my little air saw, and cut a thin line and just kind of weld, you know, cut a little bit and weld, and then I can just reach in there and take the old piece out as I go, which I did that on some of the trunk, and it worked out pretty good, because I don't know why I cannot mark a line, cut it, and then make shit fit like it's supposed to. Like, I can't cut a line straight to save my life. So if I have it, maybe cut all this part off away from that brace and get it fitted there. Well, I guess if I point the camera where it needs to be, get it fitted there intact and held in place, then maybe I can take my air saw and try to just use the new piece as a guide, so my cuts won't get wonky, you know. That's one of the hardest parts for me, is, you know, making stuff fit right. You know, once I start cutting on it, I get way out of line with my cuts, and I haven't mastered that part yet. But I mean, that's looking pretty good, like compared to what we, you know, what we started with. And I think I'll do like I did on around the back glass. You know, maybe take some of that red paint and scuff on there a little bit, because I think a lot of this gray will come off. Because when I first bought this car, it had, you know, 30 years of stuff growing on it, and the more I washed it, the more of this came off. So I bet if I scrubbed it, a lot of that'll come off. But that is a problem for another time. And I still have rust in the very front here that I got to work on too. So we're not even close to being done with this fender. So, but I'm gonna think about this for a minute before I start cutting anymore, because like I said, the way I screw cuts up, I don't want to get it screwed up to where I've cut too much off and don't have enough room with, you know, what I've cut off of the new piece. So I'm gonna have to cipher on it for a little bit. All right, so I had to trim the old fender back on the front and back to get it, because it wouldn't, I trimmed the back first and tried to get it in place, and it wouldn't go back towards the door far enough. So I did have to cut this piece out here in the front. Of course, I kind of mangled it a little bit, but so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna try to tack it in a few places up to about where the clamp is, and then I think I've left me enough room to get my body saw in there, and then I'm gonna cut a little bit, just push it, you know, cut to where I can weld it as I go. I'm gonna try that. Who knows if it's gonna work? So I'll get the camera set up and the welder ready, and we'll see what we can do with this thing. Sorry, forgot to turn the camera on. Oh, but anyway, I've got it tacked here, and I made a little bit of a cut, so I'm gonna start just tacking it as I go. What I'm doing is I'm cutting a little bit, and then I'll push in and tack it, and then I'll cut a little more and push it in and tack it. Stupid saw don't want to work real great though. And even with this thing, I can't cut a damn straight line to save my life. You have to cut a pretty good ways to just get a couple of tacks, because it don't give it enough give, you know what I mean? God dang it. All right, well, there it is, ugly tack welded, but pretty solid. So I'm gonna get all this finished welded. I ain't gonna make you watch me do all that, and then we'll get it ground down. But yeah, I'm gonna screw around and make this whole car solid before it's all over with. All right, that is one patched fender. I do have a couple of pinholes I need to go back and re-weld, and then we'll get it, you know, ground down again and get a little filler on it and some primer, and we're gonna call that done. We'll get that part finished. But it's late. The wife just came out and said supper was ready, so I'm gonna go eat, and hopefully we'll get this finished up pretty soon. All right, so it's the next morning. I got out here and got everything kind of sanded down and ready for some filler. I'm gonna try to get that mixed up. I got all my plug welds kind of ground down on the inside there, so we'll get all this kind of, hopefully get the filler on there this morning, and then by this afternoon it'll be dry enough to where we can kind of sand it down and get a little primer on it. So I'll get the filler mixed up and we'll get it put on here in just a second. All right, I didn't mix up a whole lot. I hope it doesn't take much. I am definitely not a body man. Never claimed to be one, don't want to be one. Definitely got, I guess I got quite a bit of heat in this, so it is warped up a little bit, but I mean, who cares? The last batch I mixed, the hardener I guess wasn't stirred up enough, or so it took forever to harden. And then this batch, I think I got too much. It's already starting to set up, so. But you know, it's one of them things I've said many times, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, so I'm just kind of playing around with this stuff. Can't see nothing. One more pretty good little blob on this. Try to get it smoothed out, but it's starting to dry too quick on me. Grooves in it. Still see the line where I welded it. I think I'm just making it worse. All right, so I'm gonna leave that and let it dry, and then we'll come back out. It's about lunchtime, so I'm gonna clean my little spreaders up real quick, and then hopefully we'll get back out here this afternoon and can sand this down. Hopefully it won't take more. I don't know, it might, but we'll see. But it's getting close, almost finished. All right, so maybe this is dry enough. Turn this compressor off so y'all can hear me. Definitely gonna have to do another coat on it. I got some spots right through there, and it's definitely, you can feel the line there where I welded it. So this all feels decent down here, but I'm definitely gonna have to put a little more right there. I wonder if that's too much for that glazing putty. I seem to have better luck with it. I may try that. I may try some of that and see what happens. If, you know, I can always sand it off if it doesn't work out right. But let me get a little more back on it so it can dry, and we'll get back at it. I guess I didn't let this glazing putty dry good enough before I started sanding on it. So it's just kind of like peeling off. So I guess I'm gonna have to let it dry for a little bit longer. So it'll be a little bit, and we'll get some more sanding done on it, hopefully, and get this finished up. I think it looks pretty good. I finally got it kind of smoothed out a little bit. It's hard to tell with all the different colors as far, you know, if it's perfectly good, but, you know, we're not trying to go for perfectly good. We're just trying to go for good enough. But I think I'm going to spray a little primer on it, because I think I can't see any more pinholes or anything, but they'll show up in the primer. So let's get a little solid color on it and see if that makes it look any better. And it'll show up some waves and stuff, so I don't care if I get this on pretty thick, because I'll probably scuff it afterwards. Filler is showing through pretty good. Definitely gonna have to sand on it some more. Yeah, it's pretty lumpy right there. I don't know if y'all can see it right there. Might have to do a little more work to it. Get some back there on the back side where we welded it together. Yeah, it looked better before I put primer on it. It actually looked better before I put color on it, was when it was just the sanded filler and stuff, but oh well. It is what it is. There's not big gaping rusty holes in it, so I think it looks all right. Like I said, we got a little bit of finish work we need to do to it, but as far as being done, I'm gonna call that finished. It's my first time ever patching a fender like that, so, you know, it is what it is. I kind of said, you know, about this like I did about this back here. You know, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just trying to figure it out, and we figured it out. I do, you know, I start these little projects like this not knowing what I'm doing, and I think, man, it's gonna be a lot. I don't know if I know what I'm doing, and then we figure it out. Like I said, it ain't perfect. We ain't gonna win no, you know, body working awards with this, but man, we're definitely gonna have to. We got a pretty good low spot right there and a high spot right there, but from about right there is pretty bad, but all this back here looks pretty good. I think it's good enough for this car for sure. But I will work on it some more in the future once we start, you know, going on further with it. I do got to work on the front of the fender there, but I'm not going to do that until I get the core support and the nose piece and the front valance on there, because it's going to have to, it kind of comes around, and then, so probably about this much of the bottom of the fender's got to go away. So I kind of want where the valance bolts to it, I'd like for it to be there so I can kind of gauge where it needs to be. So we probably won't do that anytime soon. But that was the last of the really big rust, other than on the back quarter over there. But I mean, that's really not that big a deal. I mean, I drive this car here, has, you know, pretty good rot on the rear quarters on both sides. So, you know, I ain't above driving one with that on it, but I mean, that was pretty bad. So I'm happy with it, you know, and I learned a lot doing it, you know. Like I said, it ain't perfect, but you know, it's just one of them things you got to do, and do a lot, I think, to get really good at it. But I think it's definitely good enough for what we're trying to do with this whole car. So, you know, it is what it is. But I think that's where I'm gonna end this video. This was kind of like the last one. It's kind of drug on a little while. So again, I appreciate everybody watching. Everybody that comments, I really appreciate it. Please, you know, continue to comment, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, and we will catch y'all on the next one.